afternoon to all our viewers out there, and welcome to CNBC BNNC News. Always bringing you the top stories from across the United States. Today we'll be talking about Executive Order 8802 and A. Philip Randolph. Between January 1941 and June 1941, a march on Washington succeeded in pressuring President Roosevelt to issue Executive Order 8802, which banned discriminatory employment practices by federal agencies and all unions and companies engaged in war-related work. It also established the Fair Employment Practices Commissioner to enforce this policy. Now, Nick, all of this was started by one man.
Really? Well, who was this man?
His name was A. Philip Randolph. He was born in Crescent City, Florida, after founding a magazine called The Messenger and becoming the general organizer of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. He went on to head the National Negro Congress, but later resigned because he thought the group was controlled by communists. Then, to strike out independently, he started the March on Washington.
Very interesting.
I know. Civil rights is interesting stuff.
Of course.
Always.
Today a man was shot and killed while giving a speech in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom. The man has now been identified as Malcolm X, a man from Omaha, Nebraska, who is largely credited with increasing followers in the Nation of Islam from 500 to around 30,000. Now, of course, he later left the Nation of Islam after finding out his mentor, Elijah Muhammad, was having affairs and children with around 6 women. After he left the Nation of Islam, tried numerous times to kill Mr. X, but none of these attempts succeeded. Until today, when Mr. X was shot 15 times at close range and pronounced dead immediately afterwards. In local news today, a bus was pulled over by officers. Now, this bus was reported to be driven by this man here, Colton Hins. Now, the bus was reported to be going down County Road 18 at about 90 miles an hour with a bunch of kindergartners in there returning from a field trip. Now, after officers tried to stop this bus, Mr. Hins just put the pedal down and exceeded speed limits of about 140 miles per hour. It took 10 cop cars to finally stop the bus and 10 more to subdue Mr. Hins and put him in cuffs when he tried to make a run for it. More on this story as it develops. And now with our person of the day, here's Dylan.
Thank you, Nick. Today's person of the day is Huey Newton. Newton was one of the founders of the Black Panther movement, which radicalized the civil rights movement in America. The FBI labeled both Newton and his partners of the Black Panther movement as public enemy number 1. The movement provided free breakfast for children, shoes, and it sponsored a school. Newton also had a long series of confrontations with law enforcement, including several convictions which he was participated in political activism. He continued to pursue an education, eventually earning a PhD in social science. Newton spent time in prison for manslaughter due to his alleged involvement in a shootout that killed a police officer, but was later acquitted. In 1989, he was shot and killed in Oakland, California by Tyrone R. Robinson, a member of the Black Guerrilla family.
Thank you, Dylan. Now, in other news, we have some newly released information on the Tuskegee Institute, a black university located in Tuskegee, Alabama, founded on the 4th of July in 1881. Dr. Booker T. Washington was the first teacher. Now, George Campbell, a former slave owner, and Lewis Adams, a former slave, both were heavily involved in the founding of said university. Now, Adams wanted an educational institution for his people. An initial space and building for the school was provided by Butler Chapel Am Zion Church, not far from its present site. Dr. Washington headed the institution until his death in 1915 at the age of 59. And that's all that we have today for the Tuskegee Institute. But we'll have more. I have a message. And now here's Isaac with the weather.
Rain. 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 Thunderstorms. And now to your 7-day forecast.
During the weather report, I was able to figure out the secrets of teleportation, and am now standing by Lowndes County Courthouse in Alabama, where African Americans, with the help of activists from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, started their own all-black independent political party called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization,